Hello and welcome back. This is Madan. Today I'm going to show you how you can track user activities in our web application in ASP.NET Core. So in this tutorial we'll learn how we can track each and every details the user did on our website. So we can track what URL user visited and what data they sent to our web server, and we can also record from which IP address they visited on our site, or the from which IP address the visitor are coming to our site. And the way to achieve this in ASP.NET Core MVC or ASP.NET MVC is to use something called action filter. And in this project we are going to see the demo of how we can use action filter to track user activities and record them into the database. To start with, I have created a basic MVC template here, and it is just a plain scaffolded template. Now let's add action filter to it. So now let's create an action filter, and I'm going to add a class here. In order to use action filter, we need to make this class inherit from iActionFilter filter, and let's bring in the namespace for action filter, and let's implement the interface. So it has a two method, one on action executed and on action executing. So this on action executing method executes or will be invoked when the user just start to visit the action. That means if a user request for the index action, then before accessing the index action, the on action executing method of the filter will get executed, and on action executed method will be executed after the user has finished executing the method. So if we apply on action executed filter to this method index, then that will get executed just after user finished using this action method. So we are going to make use of the on action executing method. That means we are going to track the user just before they start to visit any action of the controller. So let's remove this, since we are not going to throw an not implemented exception here. Now we need to get the URL of the user. So to get the URL, controller name equal to, we have context dot route data dot values, and we can access the controller by the controller key, and action name equal to context dot route data dot values and action. From this we can create a URL equal to, and I'm going to use the string interpolation syntax here, controller name slash action name, and this gives us the URL. Now the other thing is we need to track what data users are sending to our web server. I mean, an user can send the data in the two way. They can either send data from the query parameters or from the form. So I'm going to put a small check here: if not string dot is null or empty, context dot http context dot request dot query string dot value. So if this is not null, that means user is sending data through the query string, through the URL, or they clicked some link on our website. Then let's create a variable here, variable data equal to empty. Then we are going to store data equal to context dot http context dot request dot query string dot value, and else, that means if the user sent the data through the form, then we are going to access those data. Variable user data equal to, we have context, and with context we have action attributes, and if there is single parameter, then we can fetch that by using first or default of the link method, first or default, and here the single argument means if we have only single argument like this, http, let's create a one method first, http post, and then public I action result new. Suppose user is passing one object here, object employee, employee, then we can get this object employee by doing first or default on the action arguments. But if you have multiple parameters here, then we can run loop on the action arguments, because this action argument returns the iDictionary of string and object. So let's do this for a single parameter, first or default. And now I'm going to convert this into the string, and in order to convert this string we can use the JSON helper here, Newton software JSON. So variable string user data equal to JSON convert dot, let's bring in the namespace and then serialize object and then pass user data. So this will serialize the convert the object into the string, JSON string, and we are going to store data equal to string user data. After then we can also track the username of the user, and let's create a variable username equal to, and we have a context and http context user dot, we get user from this identity dot user dot identity dot name. And then we can also track the IP address of the user, IP address equal to, we have context dot http context dot connection dot remote IP address. Let's convert this to a string. Now we have got all the information, that means the URL the user has visited and the query string they passed or the form data they submitted through the form, and we also have the username and the IP address. So we get this username if the user is logged into our site, otherwise we will get this username null. So this value will be null if the user is not logged in, and we get the IP address of the user. After that we need to save this to our database. So let's create another method here, public void store user ACTI activity, and we are going to pass here data URL, and we have username and we have IP address. Now in order to store data into the database we need to bring in the application DB context. So let's put a constructor here and then application DB context, and let's create a private field and then bring in the namespace for application DB context here. And we also need a model to store this, to send this data to the database. And to save the time I have created some model here. So let's create a model called user activity, new file activity.cs, and let's copy the code for user activity.cs. and let's create another model employee.cs. this employee.cs is just for demo, and let's copy the code for employee.cs, and I will show its use where we are using this employee in our application in just a moment. And we also need to create a one view here, home, and then let's create a new .cshtml, and let's bring in the code for the new view as well. New view, and this new view expect the employee model. So let's create a new action here. First of all, http get public I action result new, and then let's return view with new employee here. we are not going to do anything in this new. We'll just check if our application can track the incoming data or not. So employee, let's create an employee object here and return redirect to action and then name of index. I'll save this. After then we need to register this user activity into our application DB context here. So we do prop prop db set of user activity user activities, and let's bring in the namespace for these user activities. Let's save this. Now we can use, let's create a object of user activity here. User is ctibity activity equal to new user activity and let's bring in the namespace for this. Now we can populate its property. So we have data equal to data, we have URL equal to URL, username equal to username, and then IP address equal to IP address. After that we can pass this into a context dot user activities dot add user activity, and then let's save it. So context dot save changes. Now we need to generate the migration for this. So let's open the terminal and then generate the migration. .NET yeah mij migrations add user activity table, and I'm going to use the default database, that is the default Sqlite database that comes when the project template is generated. Now let's update the database. .NET yeah database update. Now it has successfully updated our database. Now let's call this store user activity from on action executing. So store user activity. Now we need to pass the appropriate parameter here, data, URL, username, and IP address. So let's save this. So now let's do one final thing to make it work. So in order to apply this filter to our any controllers globally, we need to go to our startup.cs, and in startup.cs we can add option to the add controller with views here. So inside this we can do options, goes to options dot filters dot add, and then we need to use type of keyword and then pass our filter. Our filter is user activity filter, ctibity user activity filter, and since both are in the same namespace, so it didn't complain about any imports. So let's save this, and now let's try if everything is working or not. So our application is starting up, and I have used Sqlite database. So in order to browse Sqlite database, we need to use the DB browser for Sqlite, and you can download it freely from internet. So let's open the database. We need to find the location of our database, this app.db here. App.db, open, and our user activities, it stores the user activities. So let's refresh this, and let's see if there are any entries in user activities table or not. So let's refresh, and we see that there is one user activity. So user has visited home/index and no data has been passed, and the IP address is localhost, and in case of localhost you get this ::1, otherwise you will get the actual IP address. So we are browsing from the localhost, that's why we see this, and the time, and you can see a see in detail by clicking on this on here and see the data on the right hand side. So now let's visit the another URL here. Our another URL is home controller and /new, and we have new form as well. So /home/new, and let's put some data here, 20, and then send, and it has redirected back to the index section of the home controller, which it should do that because we have said it to do so here. And now let's go to the database and check if that has recorded that activity has been recorded or not. So it has been recorded here, and we can see URL is home/new, and our data is full name test, and then created at age. This whole things has been recorded, and the time of the user activity here. So now let's put some parameter here, URL parameter, and try to navigate this action and see if this also records that query string or not. So let's say string name, and let's save this, and let's try to visit this action by passing the query string name. So our server has started up, and then let's refresh. Now home/privacy what name equal to abc, and let's check it in the database, and we can see the URL is home/privacy, and our query string contains here the what sign represents that this is a query string, and name equals abc. So in this way you can see what the users are doing in your application and track their moments. So this is it for now, friends, and if you are new to this channel, then please subscribe, share, and like the video if you actually like it. And thanks for watching. Have a great day.